Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's video. So what we're going to be doing today is working on the 2007 GT500 behind me, and we're installing what is called a Kenetic Motorsports cranksaver stud. So let me go ahead and show you what's going on. So this right here is what is called the Kenetic Motorsports cranksaver stud, and the idea is the stock bolt, well, we're going to pull it out and check it out, but from what my understanding is, the short side is the side that bolts into the motor, long side over here is the side that's going to stick out of the crank. And basically what happens is the stock bolt doesn't, let me rephrase this. So this is going to be able to bottom out all the threads. I'll throw in a picture from their site. And then this wide area is actually built into the crank for whatever reason. Now the bolt is the size of the threads all the way down. So this wide area is just kind of open space. So it strengthens it by filling up that gap. It's also ARP2000 hardware, so this thing is actually really heavy, which is awesome. It's also expensive. It's 120 bucks. So the reason you want to do this is allegedly running an overdrive balancer, which I have an Innovator's West 10% overdrive balancer. Pretty much that means it's slightly bigger for the supercharger side, and it's supposed to spin the pulley faster, generating more boost. So it's one of the reasons this car makes decent power with the giant 3-inch pulley on it. So that's the first part. Now, that by itself really isn't bad, but doing that and running a two-step can start to put a lot of strain on the timing components and everything on the motor in general. And one of the weak points that's been identified is the stock bolt. So what we're going to do today is go ahead and pull that out, and we're going to install this. Now, I'm probably going to eat these words, but this is supposed to be a very straightforward install. You pull out the old bolt, you clean the threads, you hand tighten this all the way until it bottoms out. There's a little area right here for an Allen key, so you can tighten it down just a little bit, don't torque it. And we'll be going through the install directions as well as we do this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on this thing. So one more thing before we go, I'm going to try and do this from the top down. There's a lot of piping in the way, but it's all rubber and movable. I really don't want to try and do this from the bottom up just because the sway bar is directly in the way of where I would need to get a wrench in there. If we have to, we'll jack it up and do it that way, but I want to try this top down method first just because I think it'll be easier and I don't have to pull all the jackets and crap out. So let's go ahead and give this a shot, guys. Step one is going to be removing the coolant tank, just getting it out of the way. And the whole idea for this is just to be able to have access. Now I have pretty good access to this balancer. So that right there is the Innovator's West 10% overdrive. Something to be aware of, the balancer is pressed on. You do not need to remove that to be able to get to this bolt. So the balancer is going to stay in place, the belts are going to stay in place. All that stuff is going to be just fine. The only thing we need to worry about is getting that bolt out. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now, put the car in gear, put the e-brake on to make sure that, well, it's already on because it's a manual. Put the car in gear just so the drivetrain can't spin, and that'll keep the motor from spinning as well. The car's in gear, which is awesome, shouldn't be moving. So next step, we're going to go ahead and take a breaker bar, and then we're going to grab the bolt size at a 19 millimeter. Just going to grab a breaker bar and a 19 millimeter and start cranking this out. It is cranked up to, if it was done correctly, 45 foot-pounds and then 90 degrees, which, yes, somewhere in the foot-pound range. These are a torque to yield bolt stock, so that's kind of, I guess, how that work. The one we're going to be putting in is a reusable bolt, as I said, ARP2000 hardware. Should be pretty good. So let's go ahead and grab the breaker bar and our socket and get to work. So went ahead and just pulled it out. It was not anywhere as near as tight as I thought it was going to be. Again, I don't know the torque spec on this, so maybe that was fine. I also had a breaker bar sticking out to here, so hopefully it was torqued the way it was supposed to be. I honestly don't know. But it's out now. It wasn't finger loose when I started, so I guess it was in there. So let's go ahead and compare these two real quick so I can give you an idea of what we're talking about. So this is the stock one, and I'm going to go ahead and say safely where that Loctite or whatever that crap is on the end right there starts. That's how many threads are in there. And that is the difference, and that's why we're installing this. So as you can see, clearly there is a lot more space for pretty much almost double the threads to go into that crank and hold everything steady. And that's why we're doing this install right here. So this is the stock bolt. I don't know. I'm pretty sure this is like the stock bolt. I don't think this is a... I don't think this is any kind of special hardware or anything. Weight-wise, whoops. Still pretty heavy duty, so that's good at least. This is also 19 mil, like I said. Something also, if you're aware, if you're doing anything like this, make sure you have the proper socket, like a 5-point. Don't try and mix star points and 5 points, even though they work. But if you're trying to get down to tight torque specs and stuff like that, make sure you have the right size so you don't hurt anything. So now that we have the crank bolt removed, this is directly off their website. Remove the crank bolt and washer, check. Removal of the pulley is not required. Sweet, check. Clean the inside of the crankshaft snout to the best of your ability using WD-40 aerosol brake cleaner, and a bristled brush, i.e. pipe cleaner or toothbrush. Any material left inside the snout may prevent stud from fully seating. Running a thread chaser M12 by 1.5 is not required but highly recommended. An alternative is to remove the washer from the stock bolt and then fully thread the bolt into the crankshaft to clear lower portion of the threads. Clean and remove any residue from the surface of your crankshaft pulley where the washer will rest. All right, sweet. So pretty straightforward. So what I'm going to go ahead and use here, as you can see, I have a rifle cleaning brush and a cleaning rod. I also have a slightly longer one. I don't know which one I'm going to use just yet. I have some patches and a patch holder just to get to the back to get any residual brake cleaner out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, guys. Step one, cleaning stuff. So I just finished running through with the stock bolt. I went ahead and just used this as a handhold, stuck it in, cleaned all the threads off, and drove it all the way to the bottom. There was a little bit of stuff that came out. I already wiped it off. It's whatever. So as long as it's mostly clean, it seems to be good enough, and then no thread lock around here, whatever. I was able to bottom it out by hand, so we should be good. Now, so I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of these instructions real quick. So it says apply a small amount of ARP Ultra Lube to the bottom portion of the cranksaver stud, short side, and thread stud into the crankshaft by hand. So here we have our short side. I have a little bit of lube on there, just thread deep, and should be good. And then this is the stuff that they included right here. Ensure the stud is fully seated using the 4mm Allen. I left my Allen down at the house, but I have some other ones up here, so it'll be fine. But do not torque. Fully seated. If fully seated, the top portion of the threads will begin just below the face of the crankshaft snout. If you meet resistance before the stud reaches that point, do not try and force. Use the most common reason for this is a residual thread locker and or dirt in the lower portion of the threads where the current bolts do not reach. Remove the stud and return to the preparation section. All right, so that's the next part of this whole process. Next up, it says liberally apply ARP Ultra Lube onto the flange and the threads of the nut and top side, nut side of the washer. Install washer and then thread onto the stud by hand. All right, so let's go ahead and knock out this next portion. We're gonna go ahead and drop this all the way in, and after that, we'll continue with the next portion. Evidently, I am shit at cleaning threads because 0.2 turns into it. I already ran into resistance. So I got some more cleaning to do, and I'll come back with you once we have this thing fully seated. So a quick little update on what's going on right now. So as you can see, let's see if I can get this close. So I put thread sealer on here just so I can, not sealer, the ARP Ultra Lube on here just to see how far up the threads it would go, and it goes up to about there before it bottoms out, which is good. That's about the full length. However, this one I'm having a real hard time. The highest I can get it is up to that little brown line right there, which is right there, and I'm able to hand do it up to about that point, and then it just kind of stops. So I've been playing around. It's getting better, but there's definitely some gunk or something in the back of these threads that's being a real pain in the butt right now that I'm working on. So it's just taking a lot of time. I've also found a little tiny bits of metal right here that keep coming out, and I don't know where the hell those are coming from. I'm not putting any effort into these bolts whatsoever, and it's been, I don't know, I'm not like torquing anything. There's no metal that I can see, so unless it's something that was in there just hanging out at the end of the threads, I don't know. A little sketchy though. But what I'm doing right now is just basically chasing it, trying this again, chasing it, trying this again, and eventually we're gonna get all the dirt out of these things and whatever's clogging it up, but it's being a real bitch, I'll tell you that right now. Alrighty guys, so it is much later in the day. Well, this is a really frustrating job, put it the least. So basically why it's bugging me so much to make sure these threads are perfect is I really don't want to damage anything. So let me flip you around and show you what's going on. So right here we have our stud, and I don't know if you can tell where that light gray ends. That's about as deep as I've gotten in before I've gotten concerningly stiff. And I've been using my Allen key right here, and I've just been counting rotations as to how I'm trying to figure out when it's fully seated or not. And what's annoying is the stock bolt, which is this one, it's got to have slightly thinner threads or something, because I know they're the same thread pitch because obviously it's going in, but like this thing, I can hand tighten this thing all the way down, and you can tell that's the end of the gray, and it's actually just a hair deeper. It's right about there. So like all the threads are clear all the way down. It's just I'm stressing because I want this to be, you know, right and not screw anything up. So I also brought out the air hose so I could freaking spray out the inside of that and make sure it's good. So that's where I'm at, guys. I'm gonna try and get this. If I can get it like 15 or 16 maybe, and if I can put the washer on there and seat it right, then I think that should be fully seated. It's just really stressed. Like I do not like messing with motor stuff. when it comes to like this. Like motor swaps, in my eyes, are honestly simpler than doing stuff that involves a crank or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in, and hopefully this is the last round I need to do this, and then we'll continue with the directions and hopefully get it done today. It's been an interesting day out. It's definitely been raining on and off a bunch, which also prolonged the process. All right, so I don't know if you can tell in there, but it's sticking out just a hair. So that was about 13.5 rotations, and all of a sudden it just felt like it stopped. So I backed off just a hair, so I know it's not completely bottoming out, putting weird stress on stuff. I think we finally got it in, guys. Holy crap, that straight up sucked. So it probably sucked more due to stress than anything else. I do not enjoy messing around and stuff like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean off the surface a little more around there with the rag, and then we're gonna go ahead and grab our other hardware and start putting that on. All right, so as you can see, it's barely poking out down there. So the next part is liberally apply ultra lube torque onto the flange, nut threads, topside nut and washer. Long story short, pretty much we're gonna throw some onto the threads, and then with the nut, the washer I'm gonna have it's identical, so I'm gonna seat it this way, and I'm gonna have some on this surface and then the nut side surface so that it has something to slip against when I am installing it. And the idea is you don't want this washer to move. That's kind of the barrier between the stud and everything. You just want this nut to be able to move against the washer and the threads, and that's about it. That'll hopefully get us a pretty reliable torque number. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So as you can see, went ahead, gets our outside, inside is clean. So let's go ahead and slide that over top. Sorry, I realize lighting's getting real crappy now, but that is now on. And next up, we're gonna take our nut, which is also liberally applied with the ultra lube stuff. Top side's clean. We're gonna thread this on by hand real quick. Sweet, so far so good. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do this in stages. This way I know my torque wrench isn't wigging out or anything stupid. So we go ahead and got a nice 12 point on there, 16 mil like they said. And then first I'm doing 50 foot-pounds, then I'm gonna go up to 100, then 130, and then the last 145 just to make sure everything's good. All right, boys, so it looks like it's installed now, so check it out. Well, there's really not much to see. Let me see if I can get the camera down there. Can't show you some goodness, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, let me tell you, trying to get this thing to 150 foot-pounds is borderline impossible. This thing is a real bitch. So I don't know if I quite clicked 150 or not. I just went up in increments, so I know I'm at least at 130 foot-pounds. That was the last solid click I got. Had it at 150, and I've been pushing on it a couple times, and I think we're pretty much there. Hopefully a few foot-pounds isn't going to make a huge difference. If you can get it, good on you, but my freaking crank keeps starting to rotate even with it in gear and everything. Not really rotate, but it's enough to where it's taking up all the drivetrain slack, and I keep moving from here to here before that rotation stops. And yeah, it's definitely on there pretty good. So I'm basically, what I'm gonna do just to make sure is I'm gonna come back and check this pretty much probably for the next couple outings, just to make sure nothing loosens up. And it's just something on my radar to keep an eye on. Again, I am very confident this is not going to come off. However, just being aware of it, it's something to check off. It's only going to take a couple minutes just to make sure. So yeah, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put this stuff back together real quick, and that's that. So as you can see, everything is buttoned up. It is the next day, guys. Didn't really like the intro. It's getting dark and everything, so decided just to finish up everything today. So it's all torqued down. Everything should be good to go. I will say for sure, if you're doing this, their little suggestion to have everything basically in gear with the e-brake on works to an extent, but trying to get the final torque on this at 150 foot-pounds is borderline impossible. I definitely got it, but it's just like, holy crap. Trying to push this thing, basically what you're trying to do is push the torque wrench this way, and even with all my body weight on it, it was a real pain in the ass. So it's in there, guys, but if you're doing this, and I mean, I don't know, it's a pain in the ass, best way to put it. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. That's gonna do it for today's video. Hopefully this thing holds up. I'm definitely gonna be checking up on it in the future just to make sure. I do trust it, but I want to make sure that everything's good to go. I will say this new one, it's definitely on there a lot tighter than the old bolt was. Whether that means the other one wasn't torqued down properly or not, I honestly don't know. I really don't. But I do feel slightly more confidence inspired now that it's in there the way it is. And then also because it's taking up all that extra blank space inside of the crank, like you saw, it definitely fit without any machining or anything like that. So there is a significant amount of just, I guess, I'm gonna call it white space of where that bolt's just not touching anything. So now it's kind of filled in when the balancer does move around and everything, especially under torque, being the two-step or just the overdrive in general. It should have strengthened up the internal so that cranks snout a little bit. So I'm pretty happy with the mod. If you're just going to do this by yourself though, just bear in mind, like, this is something that I wasn't super comfortable with. I'm not saying it's something you should do, you know, by yourself, but it's something that's on the table if you want to knock it out. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one, and hopefully we'll get to do some stuff. We're about to get smacked with a hurricane here, which is kind of why it's windy. Car's gonna just hang out until after all this stuff blows over, and we'll try to get to the track again soon and test everything out. Yep, I'll see you guys. Take it easy.